Story 1. I work for a company that manufactures rigging equipment and steel cables, including crane cables and elevator cables. All of the suppliers of the spools of raw cable we purchase have increased their prices, and there are significant shortages. Story 2. I work in a stainless steel processing plant. My company owns two very small-scale mills on the East Coast. From the end of January until about mid-February, we were working 12-hour days and quickly fell behind on-time delivery due to concerns about tariffs. All our customers were placing large orders to try to avoid price increases. As of the 5th, my machine and most machines in my building are not in use. I do not have an order due until May, and I have seen some of those disappear from my screen today. Story 3. I am a project manager in steel construction. Recently, I spoke with a sales representative from one of our steel suppliers. He reminded us that prices fluctuate not only due to supply and demand, but also due to confidence in futures. We are seeing price increases on hollow structural sections, wide flange beams, and plate products of around 20% since Donald Trump took office, before tariffs were implemented. In other words, the mere threat of tariffs caused such a significant price increase. Now that tariffs are being implemented, we were informed to expect further price increases in the near future. The supporters of Trump I work with are making a no pain, no gain type of argument, which I find to be a rather misguided attitude. Are we here to lift weights at the gym? No, we are not. It is going to get worse before it gets better, and I agree with that. However, there was no need for this situation to arise in the first place. To me, it is like starting a fire and then selling fire extinguishers. Why is there a need to manufacture artificial leverage? The United States is the largest economy in the world, and Trump simply lacks the skill to navigate complex international relations to find leverage where it already exists, without causing damage in the process. We are being governed by pure foolishness. Story 4. I work in the machining industry. A month ago, when the tariffs were announced, aluminum and steel vendors raised their prices by 25% from the start. This was material that had been previously quoted, and we knew it was in their yard or warehouse. They tried to take advantage of the threat of tariffs and were already increasing prices. We ended up going to a different vendor. We go through thousands of pounds of aluminum each week. We have no choice but to pass the increases on to our customers, who already nickel and dime us. It is going to be a challenging situation and will likely get worse before it gets better. Story 5. I am in the aluminum business, and suppliers are advising us to add the tariff percentage implemented by Trump to our prices. In every contract we send out, we inform our customers that prices are subject to change between the time we agree to the contract and when the work is completed. Story 6. I am a certified welder. Although I am not currently working in the industry for various reasons, I can tell you that the last time there were mass layoffs in the semiconductor sector, it ultimately led to the downfall of the company I worked for. Those employed in the semiconductor industry should consider preparing for potential changes. Story 7. We have many more manufacturing jobs that utilize steel and aluminum raw materials than we have in steel and aluminum refining and production. Rough estimates indicate that we lose over 2 manufacturing jobs for every steel or aluminum job saved. The tariffs imposed during his first administration on steel and aluminum are estimated to have cost about 175,000 jobs, or approximately 2.5% of total jobs in manufacturing. Story 8. I don't know, but I worked for a company that produced construction equipment during his first administration. We bought our steel from Canada and China. When the tariffs went into effect, we had to raise our prices by 20%. My manager did his due diligence and checked if we could buy our steel from within the United States. He found that United States steel companies wouldn't be able to handle the demand of our company, let alone any others. The quote he received for even small orders would have required us to raise our prices by 300%. I left that company in 2019. I drove by it a few weeks ago. The steel yard was completely empty. My guess is all that manufacturing was moved overseas to avoid the tariffs, and the factory is now a repair shop and warehouse instead. Story 9. I worked in manufacturing, machining, and research and development. Even the threat of tariffs makes management start to plan around who they will cut first. There is a lot of fear and uncertainty. People know this is going to hurt, but things are so unpredictable that trust is lacking in leadership, making it hard to determine the extent of the impact. If this situation continues, it will cripple American manufacturing. We use raw materials to make components and then ship those components overseas. The tariff is only harming us. Story 10. I might be off base, but something tells me steelworkers support Trump. I assume they are excited about getting exactly what they wanted and voted for. I'm happy for them. Story 11. I work in the automotive industry. This might surprise you, but there is a lot of steel in a car. Donald Trump created a situation that has not improved. Story 12. The individuals formulating and implementing economic policy in the United States today have likely never worked a day in a factory and may have never set foot in one. Factory work can be challenging. It can be hot, loud, dangerous, filthy, and mentally exhausting, and often does not offer adequate pay. Concerns about drug problems in America could intensify if millions of Americans return to jobs on production lines. Story 13. The oilfield midstream sector is experiencing significant changes. We ordered some large bore valves, which were marked up over 100% due to tariffs and the associated threats and uncertainties. Prices that were previously in the several thousand range are now in the 100,000 range. Projects are underway. However, this situation may halt new initiatives and will certainly impact the return on investment for the company. Story 14. I work in industrial distribution for hand tools, fasteners, and abrasives. We just received a notice that tomorrow all our sockets are going up by 20%. We also received an 8.9% surcharge on abrasives and a 25% price increase on fasteners. Even our domestically made chain is subject to the 20% tariff charges because they use Canadian steel to manufacture it in the United States. So even this claim of being made in America is not entirely accurate. Story 15. I am a production manager for a worldwide steel fabricator of medical and food supplies. My superiors believe everything is fine. Even though our prices have increased across the board, sales are declining, and the staff notices that we are slowing down. Yet, for some reason, the executives are relying on an economic report predicting a recession in 2032. They refuse to acknowledge that we are experiencing it now. I have been preparing my resume. Story 16. My wife is a direct importer of steel from China. It is her family's business that she has been running for over 20 years. There is much about steel tariffs that people in America do not understand, and that goes for tariffs in general. Here are some key points. The idea that this will bring back steel production to the United States is unrealistic. It is like saying that if a magical event removed all oil production, refining, and transport from Texas, we could implement a tariff on foreign petroleum and by next year, all that Texas infrastructure would be rebuilt and operational. It simply will not happen. Much of the steel production capacity we once had is largely gone. Most steel products are produced at rates far exceeding anything made overseas. Some believe that countries like China, Vietnam, and Mexico will just pay the tariffs if they want to do business here. This is incorrect. They will redirect and repackage products in non-tariff countries before shipping them elsewhere. It is a misconception that the targeted country pays the tariffs and that our businesses are unaffected. If you import a tariffed good, you pay the tariff directly to the federal government, as assessed by customs. You have no choice but to pay it before the goods can leave the port. The list of tariffed items changes frequently. Often, each broad category includes subcategories that are exempt from tariffs. For example, while rubber from a specific country may incur a tariff, pencil erasers from there may be tariffed while tires are exempted. The reasons for these exceptions can be unclear, especially considering that these products often have direct competitors in the United States. Additionally, there are often tariffs beyond those of the United States, mostly from the World Trade Organization. This has been in effect for steel imports from China for some time. Story 17. Last time this happened in 2018, my husband lost his job at a computer numeric control factory because their costs literally doubled. He was never able to transition to that industry again and had to move to the technology industry. Story 18. I was just on a call about it with a group of supporters. We are in the middle of bidding on multiple high-value jobs, and all our costs are going to increase significantly. They still think it's advanced negotiations and that we won't see any price increases. Some supporters seem to lack awareness. I have emails stating that prices are going up. It's not speculation. I am being informed that I will be charged more before the end of the month. Prices are already rising. They just can't seem to accept that the situation is dire. Story 19. The United States will not be able to afford the steel it needs now, and Canada is the closest supplier. This situation arises when an intellectually challenged, power-hungry individual is elected to high office. Story 20. The man who drove me to the airport on the day of the election so I could get home to vote was a passionate Trump supporter who was only a few years away from retiring as a steelworker. He voted for Trump specifically to protect steelworkers. He is dating the sister of someone who is married into the family, so I do not know him well. I just know he lost his job, though I am not sure why. I believe it had something to do with Trump blocking a Japanese company from buying a steel mill. He is clearly unhappy. Story 21. Not specifically in steel, but general contractors in commercial construction. Domestic mills for both lumber and steel are looking for an excuse to raise prices. This situation provides that opportunity. Additionally, they will not be able to keep up with the demand. This will be a significant setback for the industry. Story 22. Blacksmith here. I'm feeling a lot of dread. My Renaissance Fair circuit just started, and the new tariffs are coming in right when I order the largest amount of steel. Additionally, my first show of the year was approximately $3,000 less than my average event. Furthermore, my preferred steel supplier is based in Canada. Story 23. I have been in the steel distribution business for quite a while and have been working for a boutique stainless distributor for the past 9 years. All our products were invented overseas and are manufactured overseas. U.S. mills have no interest in our grades. Petrochemical, paper mills, and gold mining are the largest customer segments. However, this only accounts for 5% of the total U.S. stainless steel market, so the domestic mills remain indifferent and maintain their 70 to 75% market share as usual. The last time this happened, our sales dropped 25% overnight. During that time, all the domestic producers increased prices to level the playing field. The price of a new car rose by $1,000 overnight, while truck prices increased by $1,500. As a result, new car sales dropped, and many people lost their jobs. With new cars too expensive, demand for used cars increased, leading to a rise in their prices. I believe this will happen again. We do not live in the Stone Age, the Bronze Age, or the Iron Age. We live in the Steel Age, and to a lesser degree, the Plastic Age. None of our modern world would exist without steel. All the advanced electronic products from Silicon Valley elites are made on steel machines at every step of production and shipped on steel machines, from mined raw materials to boxed finished products. Every aspect of our lives depends on steel being cheap and readily available. Disrupting this supply, as is happening again, will cause widespread suffering. Personally, I am disgusted and embarrassed that we, as Americans, re-elected this individual given his past performance. It reflects poorly on our population as a whole. Things could get worse. How long did the Italians put up with Berlusconi? 15 years? A seemingly modern country. Story 24. I work for one of the largest steel companies in the United States and did not vote for Donald Trump. The last time he implemented tariffs in 2018, we quickly made more money by raising our prices. I assume that will happen again. If similar trends continue, I will earn more money in bonuses, but it doesn't really matter when I have to spend that extra money to cover increased prices on everything else. Story 25. I purchase components from an American company that has to use Canadian steel because no American mills produce to specification, and they pay a tariff. I also buy components from a Canadian company that uses Canadian steel, so neither my supplier nor I pay tariffs. This highlights the issue with tariffs on steel and aluminum. If the proposed regulations are implemented, we will incur a 25% fee on those Canadian components, forcing us to source from Taiwan, Vietnam, or South Korea. This illustrates the complications of trade wars. Story 26. Even if the tariffs were revoked, Trump has demonstrated his capacity to interfere in United States commerce to further his own ends far beyond that of any socialist figure he or his followers could imagine. The fact that there are champions of free enterprise still defending him reflects a troubling level of cognitive dissonance, but it is unsurprising if you understand that they comprise a cult of personality. This creates an unstable environment for investing. Any damage caused to the countries Trump has targeted will be significantly greater within America's own borders, given how quickly the rest of the world is diversifying their trade under the abnormal pressure he has created through his behavior. Story 27. I lead efforts in infrastructure sales of steel and aluminum products used in both private and public civil engineering projects. We are planning for some level of tariffs with the new administration, but this back and forth is exhausting and is causing excessive communication across the industry. All state departments of transportation have already set their budgets months ago, expecting to pay a certain amount for steel and aluminum projects and receive specific tons of material. Their purchasing power is now a fraction of what it once was, particularly for aluminum near our coastal brackish waters. There is currently no domestic smelting capable of producing the required melt for infrastructure that can circumvent these tariffs on aluminum. Overall, people are hesitant to proceed with projects due to the current instability. In good faith, we cannot simply raise or lower our prices by 25% to 50%, as this would lead to widespread communication questioning pricing or result in customers bulk buying our supply, jeopardizing U.S. infrastructure products. This also affects our business model against competing products. It's a challenging time, and I must remain emotionally intelligent in my conversations due to varying political views. I need a nap. Story 28. I don't work in the steel market, but several towns in my area have steel mills. My husband's family believes those steel mills will be back in business due to the tariffs, and I'm just waiting for them to start urging my husband to work at one because his current job isn't satisfactory for them. Story 29. I am prepared to be downvoted, but at the risk of sounding like I am supporting these policies or being insensitive to steelworkers, I think this may ultimately be a good thing. Let me explain. Again, I am not in favor of former President Trump or anything from this administration, but I feel like the average American has to actually hurt for anyone to take action against this situation that has gone on for far too long. People voted for this leader, and they will reap what they sow. It is unfortunate that good people who did not vote for Trump will suffer, but perhaps it is time for Americans to receive a harsh wake-up call about what happens when they allow corruption to take over their government. It is time to take action. Story 30. I know many people who work for United States Steel Corporation, as they are a partner of the company I work for. There is significant cognitive dissonance among many of them believing this situation is the fault of the Democratic Party, which they think puts us in a position where Trump has to correct it. Story 31. Steel mills announce price increases on steel. We will pass the increase to customers as others do. We, along with our competitors, announce that we will be raising our prices for customers. Customers scramble to place orders before the increase. It's pure chaos. Story 32. I worked in an aluminum electrical wire plant during my first term. All of our aluminum rod came from Canada, and to my knowledge, none was produced in America. Aluminum represents between 75% and 90% of the material cost of the product, so any tariff on Canadian aluminum will likely result in a one-to-one increase in the market price. The next time a hurricane impacts the Southeast, you can bet utilities will be paying that premium to replace overhead transmission lines. Additionally, it will have a dampening effect on construction, which will already be feeling price pressure from increases in lumber and steel. Story 33. I have dealt in pipe for many years. Tariffs have fluctuated, and the market has always corrected itself to some extent. However, like many things, once the price goes up, it usually does not go down. Story 34. I am a regional manager for a domestic metal framing manufacturer in the United States. Our suppliers, such as Nucor and Cliffs, are increasing prices for hot-rolled and cold-rolled steel due to tariffs. Imported steel is more expensive, so they also want a share of the profits. Our lead times are now only 60 days, down from 6 months. Story 35. I work for a company that makes steel buildings. At our last all-hands meeting, I suggested we take the steel made in our Mexican facility and ship it directly to our Canadian builders to avoid tariffs. Story 36. We build steel structures for launch complexes, nuclear power, and civil infrastructure. Our cost structure has increased, and they are shutting down our division. I have only a few weeks of employment left as jobs are being eliminated. Story 37. I work at a manufacturing company that produces machinery and robots for large enterprises. We also conduct business in Canada and Mexico and occasionally require installation services. The company has shut down 4 of our 9 sites so far this year, with 2 closures occurring just last week. This year, my site is about to begin a significant project for a client in Mexico, which involves installation. There have been discussions about the possibility of losing this project, which would severely impact the company as a whole. Management has started to expedite the work and is trying to accelerate the timeline for us to begin building this project, just in case they withdraw so we can recover some costs. Many supporters of the current administration do not seem to understand the situation. Most of them exhibit fragility. Story 38. No big deal, we are going to bring steel production back. Look at that. It is going to fire right back up. And even if it doesn't, what is $1 billion steel mill or 2 really going to cost? Plus, there is a population of skilled steelworkers ready to jump back in at a moment's notice. Happy to work 16-hour days for $3 a day. Excuse me while I go dance with joy. What a time to be alive. Story 39. I came across this thread and wanted to let our American neighbors know that we cherish and respect you as our closest friends. Many of us view you as our older brother, and I have close friends in New Jersey that we visit as often as possible. We never wanted this trade conflict, nor did we provoke it. Any counter-tariff is because we are just as proud as you are and have to try to fight back. Most of us dislike our current government and cannot wait for an election, although our right-wing party is more like centrists, so we do not really have a true right wing. I hope this situation resolves soon so we can get back to making fun of each other's beer. Cheers. Story 40. I build large cranes that cost around $2 to $3 million each. Rumor has it that they are going to raise the price by $1 to $2 million to cover tariffs. Things are not well and may get worse before they get better, I fear. Story 41. Welder fabrication here. There isn't enough raw stainless steel manufacturing in the United States to supply our manufacturing plant that produces water supply fittings. Story 42. Alcoa's CEO, Canada's largest aluminum company, stated that if the tariffs remain in place, it would result in the loss of approximately 100,000 jobs in the United States. Story 43. My husband works in iron ore mines. Things have been slow. Uncertainty is everywhere, and executives do not want to invest millions if they do not have to. Story 44. Structural and pre-engineered metal building sales are increasing. We have seen a 7 to 12% implementation from suppliers and are awaiting major updates. Today was likely the busiest day I've experienced in 5 years because many clients are eager to secure deals while prices are low and supply is stable. They inquire about when tariffs will take effect, and I respond that I do not know, but it will be like flipping a light switch. I genuinely believe that current market conditions are being manipulated, and I would not be surprised if there are charges related to insider trading. Story 45. Wait until the lead times extend to 52 weeks for something that was originally 12 to 15 weeks. I observed that during his first term. Not because of demand, it just took that long to obtain reasonably priced aluminum and steel for the products I used to sell. Story 46. Based on the comments, I cannot understand how the working-class individuals support their own unnecessary, manufactured suffering for the benefit of the wealthy elite. Corporate media and their culture war hysteria have significantly influenced these people. Story 47. Trump is harming the economy to allow his wealthy friends to purchase American citizenship and then acquire everything at a fraction of the value, similar to the Great Depression. Story 48. All the markets are unstable at the moment, and they are one move away from total collapse. I have not seen anything like it in my life. Yesterday, I had a contractor over to provide a quote for a new major project of mine. I was told, "You need to hurry if you want to move on this. We can't guarantee this quote past the end of next week due to the volatility of the markets and the tariffs. We are in serious trouble, everyone. Story 49. I work in the secondary and primary aluminum manufacturing industry, and all is good. The main competition in the aluminum industry is imports, not domestic competition. The domestic aluminum industry should gain more market share. It is worth noting that there has been a tariff on imported aluminum for some time. There is unused aluminum smelting capacity in the USA now, with most primary aluminum smelters being mothballed until economic conditions improve. Most value-added aluminum processes source their material from recycled sources, so the tariffs on primary aluminum from Canada do not have as large an impact as people may think. However, it will tighten the recycled market further, which will ultimately increase prices. It is worth noting that there is currently construction of 2 independent multibillion-dollar aluminum mills in the USA. Story 50. It is not just steel. The place where I work does not produce any steel products, yet we will still face increased costs because all our machinery is made of steel, and the machinery from all our suppliers is also made of steel. Story 51. I want to express my disdain. My father, a steel industry mogul and supporter and donor of former President Trump, worked with him for the first time when he was at a hedge fund in the 1980s and intermittently since then. He is an abusive husband, demonstrates self-hatred, and has a history of child abuse. I haven't spoken to him in years, but I hope he is facing the consequences of his actions. Story 52. Domestic steel mills will benefit because their workers will have a consistent workload, as long as they receive their raw materials from domestic sources. Most domestic steel mills now rely on scrap iron rather than raw ores. I expect the prices of iron scrap to increase, while the quality of scrap will likely decrease as mills turn to less reliable sources to meet demand. Domestic projects requiring steel will face supply challenges. Construction projects initiated even years ago will be delayed and exceed budgets because they will have to either wait for an American steel mill to produce their materials or pay a premium for foreign steel. Many projects may be canceled entirely, leaving American construction workers without work. No steel available means no work today, resulting in no pay for that day. Story 53. I am a general contractor estimator, and this situation is difficult to manage. We need to hold bids for the contracting and review process for the owners, but due to the steep escalation, almost no one can hold longer than 30 days unless they provide a 35% escalation allowance. This is very frustrating at the moment. Story 54. I work at a continuous galvanizing line at a division of a major U.S. producer. The sentiment was flat. There was some euphoria over the price increase from major suppliers, particularly Nucor, followed by some fear. The price of hot-rolled steel is up around 20% compared to 2 months ago. Now everyone's margins downstream are under pressure, and customer demand is starting to flatten. Our lines have been booked or close to booked since 2016. The original Section 232 tariffs at that time were necessary and overdue. Now we seem to be causing our own issues. The North American steel market is highly interconnected. In summary, nobody really knows what to think. This could be a small boon or a significant downturn. Story 55. I work for a fabrication shop, and most of the people support Trump. I saw no noticeable change in anyone's mood. Story 56. I work for one of the largest steel plate distributors in the country. Last time this scenario occurred, we received a bonus because our inventory became significantly more valuable. That inventory was already in our warehouses, consisting of a mix of foreign and domestic supplies. 2 weeks ago, the warehouse I mainly work from planned to receive 5,000 tons of steel plate from a foreign supplier. I was informed that this was a deal not worth passing up, as the price of steel has hit its lowest point and is now on the rise. I hope we can survive this situation. Apparently, we secured these incoming plates at such a favorable price that even if tariffs were 100%, we would still make a profit. Story 57. Are you saying there is no steel being made in the United States, so we are not pivoting to a large domestic boom in steel production? Story 58. Didn't Trump just announce a new office of shipbuilding? What does he think ships are made of? Story 59. Domestic steel mills have increased pricing despite not incurring additional costs. Prices are usually valid for only 24 hours, so everyone has to check multiple times. Projects are on hold because nobody knows what will happen. Story 60. I am a welder in a small structural steel fabrication shop in Denver, Colorado. Everyone in the company is a strong supporter of Trump and believes that everything will be just fine. Prices are rising evenly, and they think that U.S. steel mills will easily compensate for the market changes. There is also the potential for increased mining and oil and gas production, which could offset the downturn in construction. We used to handle many pipeline projects for hydraulic fracturing. I am not overly worried, but I tend to keep my opinions to myself since I am the only one who does not support Trump. Story 61. I do not have any connection to steel. However, I own oil, minerals, natural gas, and surface rights in eastern Utah. People are angry, and rightly so. Donald Trump has been detrimental to the country. Story 62. Better question. Why are there people in the steel industry who see how none of this makes sense and only harms Americans, yet still support this individual? Story 63. My father was in the steel business. The industry should have kept all of the steel plants in the United States open. Story 64. What do you mean by the steel industry? Is it the industry that consumes steel or produces it? Producers probably feel positive, while consumers of steel feel negative. Story 65. I work in supply chain management in the steel industry, which buys directly from mills and produces steel for a variety of markets. The problem is not the tariffs. Demand for steel has been soft for the last 6 to 9 months due to fear, uncertainty, and doubt related to the election. The price of steel just reached a high not seen in the last 13 months, and I expect another increase this week. These prices can be supported, as they were much higher during the pandemic for longer periods. The issue is that this situation is going to cause the bullwhip effect. Once tariffs were announced, steel purchases surged into order before anticipated increases, causing an influx of demand. Order books at steel producers filled up, and now we are seeing late orders that will continue for about 2 to 3 months, until the mills balance their capacity and lead times. Unfortunately, the bullwhip effect is essentially where a small change at the beginning of the supply chain causes more significant issues downstream. It will take time to normalize, but this isn't anything new. Strong companies will thrive, while weak ones may go bankrupt. In my opinion, this situation is exacerbated by companies making substantial profits during the pandemic without saving for the future, opting instead to continue spending. Emotionally, I worry that we may have to cut staffing in some areas. My job is relatively safe, but there's a chance I will have to take on increased responsibilities and get more involved than I would like to, as decisions need to be made. But that's life, we'll see what happens. There's a lot of political discussion suggesting that a majority of the steel industry supports the Republican Party. I grew up in the largest steel-producing area of North America, where union workers predominantly supported the Democratic National Committee. Additionally, the steel industry is primarily located in the Midwest and is male-dominated. The Midwest has a significant white population, and white males tend to lean Republican because they feel the Democratic National Committee has alienated them. We need to start collaborating instead of opposing each other, and perhaps things will improve. Both political parties have been lacking for as long as I can remember, but will continue the cycle of blaming each other until the next election. Story 66. Not a steelworker, but a buyer for a large consumer product company. While many people don't buy beams, pipes, or tubing every day, they most certainly buy our products every day. Soda cans, foil barriers, and banding that ensures products are delivered properly and safely. These individuals were so afraid of pronouns that they will lose their own jobs. Story 67. I have a client that sells steel and alloys with a few offices worldwide. When the tariffs were first announced, they informed all their clients that they would need to arrange their own shipping and logistics for shipments related to the United States. Since the company did not profit from shipping costs, this issue did not affect their bottom line. The clients did not understand tariffs, and it served as an eye-opener for them. The message was received. In the United States, domestic suppliers increased their prices to reflect the tariff pricing, resulting in no savings for clients purchasing locally. These companies are making significant profits. Considering what happened the last time the government implemented tariffs on steel and aluminum, it is not surprising that U.S. companies are once again using this to generate additional profits. Story 68. The replies here do not match reality. If the original tariffs on steel imposed by President Trump were so bad, why did the Biden administration choose to maintain and even strengthen them? Why didn't the Biden administration retract them? The Biden administration decided to uphold many of the tariffs established during the Trump administration, including those on steel and aluminum. This decision was influenced by a desire to protect domestic industries from unfair competition and to counteract China's overcapacity in these sectors. In May 2024, President Biden announced a 25% tariff on Chinese steel and aluminum products to prevent the flooding of the U.S. market. Steel manufacturers and steelworkers supported the tariffs because they protected the market from Chinese competition. Story 69. Companies installed Trump along with Moscow. If the companies care more about the country now and their own interests, they will remove this man. We are starting unprovoked wars at this point. Story 70. It will be different depending on the market and the specific products or services involved. The Northeast market differs from the Mid-Atlantic market. It also depends on whether you are using domestic resources. For us, it is mostly unaffected since we primarily deal with domestic projects, as government contracts require it. Currently, prices are rising, which is beneficial since we purchased when prices were low, giving us a good margin. Story 71. I work in steel roll forming. The sentiment is that it will be rough in the short term, but very positive in the long term as supply meets demand. Before the tariffs, there was a lot of discussion about how China and Mexico would undercut the United States steel market, so many believe this helps address that issue. Story 72. I work in the mining industry, specifically with lime, which is used in steelmaking, and we are doing well. We went from potential layoffs to having plenty of opportunities for overtime. Story 73. Well, at the border, the tariffs mean less fabrication across the border and more in the nearby towns. This time, the steel tariff also applies to products made with steel, so the manufacturing plants will be less competitive with cheap labor. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.